So today we're going to be doing the mold pot project with coils. So this is the mold that I chose. It's a wooden bowl. There's no varnish or paint on it, so it's just raw clay or raw wood so that it's porous. So since this is porous, I do not have to put a lining on it. So I can just put my clay right on here and it will have no problem popping off because there's room for air to get through. So this is the mold that I chose. I don't have to line it, but I'm gonna put it to the side while I roll my coils to start. So here's some chunks of clay that I already took off. I'm gonna start rolling them. Sometimes if it starts to get flat and it's just too big, I'll squish it a little to make it into a circle, and that helps it go in the right direction. And then you just need to push hard. So I don't want to make these coils too skinny because I just want my pot to have thicker looking coils. And also these coils are what make up the shape. So you want sturdy coils that aren't super skinny because they need to be sturdy enough to provide shape to this pot. Okay, so I have a super big coil here that I've rolled out. And I'm just gonna take pieces from it. It's pretty even. Okay, so I'm gonna start with one big coil in the middle. So I'm gonna take my clay. Well, actually I'm gonna do this outside of the pot and then I'll put it in. So I'm gonna create my little curly Q here. I wanna make sure it's wet enough. It's getting some cracks and that's okay, but I'm just gonna use that sponge and my finger to get rid of those cracks. So as you can see, I'm rolling up the coil. I want this to be pretty big since it's going to be the center point in the middle. This is probably good, so I'm going to take my butter knife. So here's the coil, that's how big I've gotten it. And I'm going to take this butter knife and cut it and weld that end piece into this so it's one coil on its own. So I'm welding that together. Okay, there's some little cracks on the side. I don't know if you can see those little cracks. That's okay. I'm gonna take my sponge and kind of buff them out. You can also get your finger a little wet and it will do the same thing, just buff it out, clean up the lines, any little cracks that formed. And then here's my coil. So I wanna put this in the middle, right here. So since this is a porous mold that I chose, I'm just gonna plop that coil right in the middle. Now I want to add some clay balls around that coil. So since this is plastic clay still, I'm gonna get my water. It's always nice to have a little water next to you. So if your hands feel dry or the cracks are forming, you can get rid of those cracks. So I'm gonna make a couple, well, more than a couple clay balls because I want those balls to go around that coil I made. So I'm gonna try and make sure that they're all about the same size. I'm just making these really fast so I can show you all. And I'm just tearing off the pieces of the coil, squishing them between my hands, rolling it around. in between my palms. And that helps me create a nice circle shape. So I'll make a couple more of these. So like I said, this clay is plastic. It's really wet. It's right out of the bag. And so I don't have to score, slip, wiggle all these pieces. But I don't have to do that to each other every time I put them in. I can kind of just place them in and squish them together. But in the end, I'm gonna have to weld the inside of this, all the coils together, like you did with the coil pot. So those of you that had exposed coils there, you still had to weld the inside of all those coils so they'd stay together, and that's what we'll have to do here too. Okay, so that's probably enough balls for now. I'm gonna put them on the outside of this. So I'm just gonna kind of stick that ball there and take them around. I'm gonna make sure to wiggle it so it connects to the clay. I'm gonna take this all the way around. I might need a couple more balls. And the part that you're gonna see of this when you're done is not this, it's the other side, because you're gonna have to weld all this together. So just keep that in mind as you're building. Okay, I think I could do 2 more balls. One more. Okay. And if you feel like your clay's too dry or getting cracked, you can get it wet. You can even get that coil a little bit wet so that they'll stick easier. And there we go. So that was my second little design after the coil, and I'm going to keep building this all the way up so it creates a bowl. Here's a closer look. So now I don't have much of this coil left, so I'm going to roll another coil. I think I want to do a wavy coil next, so something that kind of goes around the balls that I created, that like shapes to their form, so that you can see some waves in this next coil. So once again, I don't want my coils to be too skinny. This is a super long coil. You don't have to do them this long because I'm choosing to make them long and then take from the coil. So if you're uncomfortable making a huge one, you can just make a tiny one that is long enough to do your one piece that you're doing. I'm gonna make a bunch of different coils from this one. Okay, so there's my long coil. I want to take a coil and make it go around these balls. So I'm going to start that. I'm going to put this in here and just mold that. So as you can see, I'm just going around the balls. And I want this coil to be a little wavy, not completely straight. So I'm going to cut it now where it ends, and I'm going to cut that other coil too. See, I have a little chunk that came off that original coil. Here's how it's looking now. I'm going to combine those 2 pieces, the ends, I'm going to weld them together. And I'm pushing in the coils so it looks a little bit more wiggly. Going around the circles, and I'll stop here for now. So if you're gonna be done with it for today, since it's plastic, you're gonna wanna mold these together, or weld these together. So we're gonna weld all of this together with our butter knife. So like what we did with the coil pots, we're going to just blend all of this together, weld them nicely to each other, so that it will stay intact and it will be a bowl. So I'm gonna keep welding everything together, and I'm gonna keep going all around. So even the ball is getting welded to the coils, the outer coils getting welded to the ball. You want everything to be nicely welded together because this is what's going to keep those together. Because remember, we didn't score, slip, wiggle since the clay is plastic. So welding these together is very important so that your piece will stay together and you'll have a nice bowl afterwards. So see, I've blended it all together, but there's a lot of texture in there. I want it to be smoother because this is going to be the inside of the bowl. So I'm just going to take my finger and help smooth out all those edges a little bit and the rough parts of the clay that came up. You can also take a wet sponge or damp sponge and use that to help you. So I'll take my sponge. See, I took my fingers and just taking my fingers and going like this. See how much smoother those pieces and sides are. So I'm just smoothing that together. I can now take my sponge. This is a funny position for me, but you can use that to help smooth it out. So I'm going to do that in a more comfortable way now. Yeah, even just getting your fingers a little wet, I'm getting them wet from the sponge, will help you smooth this out. Okay, so now it's nice and smooth and welded nicely. See how all the balls are welded to the coil. The coil is not exposed on the inside from what we see, but on the outside, when we take this out, it's gonna look really pretty with your design and have all those details on there. So you're gonna wanna cover this tight as you can in your bag, because I'm not done. I want to create some more in there and I don't want this to dry up too much. When I come back to this next time, I'm going to have to score, slip, wiggle on the outside layer of this. So let's say I come back later and I'm going to create balls, another layer of balls here. Every little ball is going to have a piece of it that's scored and has some slip on it. And this side of the clay is going to have some scoring and slip put there so that the ball will stay. Because today we didn't have to do that because it's plastic, but this is going to be a little bit drier tomorrow when I continue to add to it. So it is not completely dry yet, but just so you can get a glimpse of what it will look like later. Hope this doesn't destroy it. Okay. You're not going to want to do this. Don't do this. I'm just doing this to show you. That's what the outside's going to look like. That's why we had to weld it nice on the inside. So you'll still have your design, but it will be in the shape of this bowl. So that is the coil mold method. So you can practice that, try it out. This is just my idea for designs, but there's a bunch in the PowerPoint still. So go back and look through there. Make sure to, once you're done with this, you're gonna let it get leather hard before you take it out. But that's only because this is a porous, sorry, the door's opening, it's scary, it's Halloween. This is a porous bowl. So you do not have to take this out until it's leather hard. It's not gonna crack because it's also a slump mold. So you can leave it in here until it becomes leather hard. And then you pop it out and it will have the form of this bowl. So good luck. If you have any questions, please ask me or Miss Kavasa, and let me know if there's anything you didn't understand in the video. In the PowerPoint, I'm also going to post steps that you can look at and look back to as a reminder as you're going. So good luck. I'm excited to see what you make.